It's, one of the things about meditation, you can count on the fact that if you have difficulty meditating, the difficulty that you have in meditating is a barometer for personhood. In other words, the more person that's there, the harder the meditation is, right? Why? Because the person can't meditate. That's the one that gets frustrated. The person can't meditate, right? Because the person depends on thinking for its existence. This is if you can get this, you can understand. The self that you are is always meditating. Self that you are is meditation. If you look at what I'm saying, what are we saying? What is Jack Kornfield saying when you meditate? He's saying to be still, to be receptive, to not judge anything, to let everything be as it is, right? Be still, be receptive, don't judge anything, let everything be the way it is. Don't try and get something, don't try and go anywhere. Just be here and be present with what's happening as it is. That's what he's saying, if you listen to him, right? Well, that's a description of the awareness, is it not? That's a description of your awareness. And your awareness is like that, is already like that, is always already like that. So your awareness is meditating all the time, right? So if you're having difficulty meditating, it's because it's the person that's trying to meditate, and the person depends on thinking. See, without being related to something, the person can't maintain its existence because it doesn't have any existence in and of itself. Therefore, it needs thinking, because if thinking is there, then the person can say, that's me. Do you follow me? If the thinking is there, the person comes into play, because there is an assumption that was made a long time ago, right? The arising of the person, the arising of the individual separate self came a long time ago. And when that arose, the first thing it did is it started to claim everything. It's not a body, it's my body. It's not thoughts, they're my thoughts. It's not everything. And if you look at this, it's not life, it's my life. It's not my family, it's not family, it's my family. It's not children, they're my children. It's not car, it's my car. It's not feelings, they're my feelings. So you see, the relationship to everything has the self exist, right? With that, so when you go to meditate, what do? You move your attention away from thought to the breath, right? And then the person starts to get wobbly, like, oh, okay, how do I know I'm here? Right? How do I know I'm here? And so it'll produce a thought that will attract your attention, right? Produce a thought like, oh, I'm awful tired right now. Then that thought pulls your attention back. Now the person's here, right? And so for people who don't even see that, right? For people who don't even see that, meditation, they won't meditate. They're so much a person that they won't meditate. You know, I have a meditation class at Mainline, and there's a yoga class before the meditation class, right? So everybody's into the yoga, right? But in yoga, the person can do yoga. You know, the person will do yoga because it can be there being the one doing the yoga, so it's fine. But if you take everything away, no yoga, no thinking, now the person is scrambling, right? Where am I, right? So there's a yoga class, everybody does yoga, and then the yoga teacher recommended that they stay and do seated meditation after the yoga, right? So a lot of them like respect this teacher, and so they showed up at the class after the yoga, right? So I had like 15 people there from the previous yoga class. And so I did my thing, you know, I explained just the basics of sitting mindfulness meditation, and then I said, let's do a practice, right? And the practice I did was the one we just did, right? 30 minutes. Well, it was like I took a whip out and started whipping people. That's the experience that people were having, right? And then the next week, when the class happened again after the yoga class, nobody. Nobody. So that's the evidence of a person. And one of the people that did come to the class spoke to one of the people that had been there that didn't come back, and she said, I can't meditate for 30 minutes. That's ridiculous. I can't do that. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to come and sit there for 30 minutes and be uncomfortable and just be there with my mind racing. That's torture. That's ridiculous. Can you hear the person? That's the person, right? And what that person doesn't see is that's who's living that person's life. And that person's life is organized around what they can't do. It's organized around what they don't want to do. It's organized around what's not comfortable. So you can see how this life is now getting small? Smaller and smaller and smaller. This is what happens when somebody becomes a mental case, right, where they can't leave the house anymore, right? The mind just kept excluding more and more and more until leaving the house was too much, until leaving the room was too much, until leaving the bed was too much. There are people who that's the case for, right? That is the mind going awry. That's the mind going off the deep end, going out of control. But it's the same mind that most everybody's walking around with. They just, because it's not that extreme, you're not diagnosed. Well, I'll diagnose you. I'll diagnose you. Yeah. See, you have you and most people have the worst form of mental illness. The worst form of mental illness. Why? Because you're all crazy and none of you realize it because you consider what's crazy to be sanity. Right? That's the worst form of mental illness because you don't even see it as mental illness. But if you stop and examine it, obviously it's mental illness. It's obvious. All you have to do is examine people's common behavior. What do we value? As collective human beings, what do we value? Well, you can tell what we value by what we spend our money on, can't you? Right? What are the businesses that have the most money?
Weight loss.
Okay. That weight loss, right? Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. What? So what we value is looking good. Our appearance. Appearance. We value our appearance. What else?
Pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals. What do we value? Control. That's what medication is. We value control. Control the body. Control the experiences. Avoid pain, right? At all costs. Even if I'm addicted, that's okay. I just can't allow myself to experience the pain. Pharmaceuticals. What else?
Insurance.
Insurance, right? Protect me. Protect me. It's interesting when you listen to these life insurance commercials, they say, if anything were ever to happen to you, it's like they don't want to say, if you croak, if you die, you want to make sure the people that are, that you leave behind, get what they deserve. So protection, life insurance. Entertainment? Right? Entertainment. Sports is entertainment, isn't it?
Yes.
What, they just signed some football player for some crazy number, right? Baseball player? Yeah, crazy numbers, right? So why did they get that much money? You know why? Because you're paying them that. You're paying them that. They get that much money because that's how many tickets they sell for the stadium and for the television rights. So it goes right back to the values human beings have are demonstrated by where they're spending their money. I heard a commercial the other day about a car, right? And they literally said, I forget the exact verbiage, but they literally said, if you want people to see who you are, drive this car. Then they'll see that you're a classy person because you drive a Mercedes, right? And when I'm driving now, I notice, recently, I don't know whether this is a new phenomenon or not, or maybe it's just because of this area, right? Of the people in this area, the money they have. There's a lot of Mercedes on the road. Notice that. The Mercedes, what are the other high-end cars? BMWs, Mercedes, Lexus, even the electric car, there's a lot of them around, Teslas, right? Maseratis. So this is the same vehicle that a Cuban drives that's 45 years old. It takes them from point A to point B. The same distance from point A to point B, somebody's spending that kind of money for the same travel. So it's not about a vehicle it's not about transportation, right? It's not about transportation. You're wearing the car. You're not driving it. You're wearing the car, right? So people will spend that kind of money to make an appearance, to look good, right? So this is the insanity, right? This is the mental illness, right? This is the mental illness. How much of your time do you spend either occupying yourself with looking good, controlling your life, protecting yourself, right? Looking good, controlling your life, protecting yourself. How much of your time do you spend doing that? And then how much of your time do you spend worrying about that stuff, even if you're not doing it? If you're not doing it, huh?
I heard the term called the hedonistic treadmill that we're on.
The hedonistic treadmill, yeah.
We're always trying to get more and more and more.
Yeah.
Satisfy ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
We never can.
The Buddhists call it the hungry ghost. The hungry ghost. It's a perfect term, right? Because it is a ghost. Because the person that you think you are isn't real. That's the ghost. And then it's hungry. You can never satisfy it. You can never satisfy it. So that's why I say it's one of the things that's important here is for you to let that sink in. You have to really let it sink in how crazy you are. And it doesn't make you bad. You know, you're innocent. You're innocent. You couldn't be any other way, right? Because you've been exposed to a crazy reality and you had no alternative to it, right? But nonetheless, you can take a step back and look at how crazy you are and look at what it costs you to be that crazy, right? And then ask yourself, you know, do I want to continue to allow this to go on? If I don't want to continue to allow this to go on, then I must make a commitment to being awake and aware. And when I meditate, I must allow myself to realize that whatever struggle that occurs for me, whatever difficulty I have when I'm sitting in meditation, that's because the person's there. That's because the person's there. Meditation, there's nothing easier than meditation. How could there be anything easier than doing nothing? How can there be anything easier than sitting still, being quiet, and doing nothing? Obviously, there can't be anything easier than that. So what makes it so hard? Because the person can't maintain its existence then. And so that's where the struggle is. The more you're self-realized, the more you know yourself as awareness itself, meditation becomes so easy, it's ridiculous. In fact, it becomes redundant. It becomes unnecessary. Because you're experiencing that all the time. That is your nature. That is the nature of awareness itself. And when it becomes so much the case, meditation becomes redundant. It's simply not necessary anymore. People who get to that place continue to meditate because they enjoy it. That's all. They just enjoy it. It's just like taking a warm bath or taking a little vacation, just removing yourself from relating to everything for a little while. But they don't have to do that in order to experience that type of thing, because even in the world, engaged with everything that's going on, they're not seeing the world that most other people are seeing, right? There is not like one of the teachers says, there's one planet and 8 billion worlds, right? Everybody's got a different world. Everybody's living in a different world, right? And the people who are self-realized are living in the heaven on earth world. How can that be? How can it be? How can they watch the evening news and see the insanity that's going on all over the place, see the destruction, the horrific things that human beings are doing, right? The way that the planet's being raped. How can somebody be in that world and be in heaven on earth? Hard to imagine, right? Because you see, they're seeing it as it for what it really is. They're seeing the truth. And the truth is, that world is an appearance. It's an appearance. It's just an appearance. It's the movie playing on the screen. And the movie playing on their screen is a movie where they see what's happening from a much more panoramic perspective. They see what's happening from a much larger perspective. What do I mean by that? What they see is that death isn't real, right? I mean, we've talked about that here. And if death isn't real, all the killing that's going on isn't real. All of the appearances of what people are doing that are creating pain and suffering and like that isn't real. It's all an appearance. It's not really happening. That's what the sage sees, that it's just an appearance. And it doesn't bother them. They're fine with it because they see the point of it. The point of it is if that suffering didn't exist, there would be nothing to wake up to. There'd be no motivation to wake up. That's the only purpose it serves. And it's not real. It's not actually happening. So it's not as if that people are really being tortured and dying. That's not the case. It's an appearance. Death isn't real, so that's not happening. None of that's actually happening. The sage sees it that way. The sage actually sees it as good. This is perfect. This is wonderful. It's wonderful. It's like I said to Jim earlier when we were talking. Everybody has this idealistic notion that wouldn't it be great? And this is real. A lot of people are lost in this. Wouldn't it be great if enough of us woke up and were enlightened that the whole planet could be heaven on earth? Everybody could be experiencing enlightened heaven on earth. Wouldn't that be wonderful? That's what we're working for, right? We're working to get there, right? And I'll tell you something, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. It would ruin the game. It would ruin the game. You can't have a game without a loser, right? Would anybody be interested in playing a game if nobody wins? Just play the game and go home, but nobody won, right? That's a setup. So life is a setup, and it's a perfect setup. Death is a setup. It's like one of my teachers said, death is one of God's best inventions, right? Because it sets up the situation, doesn't it? Doesn't your death set up a situation? It's like beat the clock, right? It sets up a situation. You have a certain number of years, right, to wake up, right? Or you'll just be a rat going around in the maze until the body drops. And you won't even know you're a rat going around in the maze. You'll be a typical human being that's struggling and coping with everything and trying to get through it all, and you call that life. Struggling, coping, and trying to get through it all, and you call that life. So life sucks, and then you die. Okay? But the beauty of it is that's really not what's happening. That's really not what's happening. Behind the scenes, the awareness that you are is having a fine time. You're just not there for it. The party's on, but you're not at it. You're busy worrying about things, right? So that's the thing. If you use this context in meditation, it means that as you meditate, you will allow yourself to recognize the fact that if I'm struggling, if I'm uncomfortable, if I'm having a difficult time meditating, it's because of who I'm being. I'm being a person trying to meditate. Rather than just allowing myself to sit there and let go and let the awareness that is always there be me, which is what it is. Just let go of everything and let the awareness that's always there be who you are. So recently, I've been really paying attention to very, very, very specific practices because I want to be able to say to you, here are some things that you can actually do, right? Because you listen to what I'm saying, and if you listen to what I'm saying and you're looking to see what the case is in life and in your own life, you're going to want to know how to get out of this mess, right? So there are things that you can do to get out of this mess. And these things are things that spiritual teachers in the past have spoken of, very specific things that you can do that will work to have you escape from the prison of your mind, have you escape from the sick life of a person. Some of those things have to do with just practices that you can put into application as you live your life. For example, stop complaining. See, if you stop complaining, that is robbing the person of their point of view, right? One of the things that the person needs is to be right? To dominate and be right, and avoid domination, and not look bad and not be wrong. So if you shut down the complaining feature of the person, that's going to automatically take a lot of the energy back from the person. How much time do you spend complaining? And I don't just mean complaining by what you say with other people, but in your own mind, you spend more time complaining there that nobody hears but you, right? You're complaining to yourself about life, about the past, about the future, about the situation, the circumstances, the politics, the finances, right? You're complaining a lot of the time, right? So if you want to know what something you can do that will move you toward self-realization, stop complaining. Don't allow yourself to complain. Another thing that you can do that will move you towards self-realization is spend more time alone. Because the person feeds on contact with other persons, right? It conspires, right? I'm a person, you're a person, right? So that helps us to feel comfortable as persons. We share things, don't we? We share our beliefs, right? We share what we agree on is true and what we agree on is false. We share what we're against, right? We play the us and them game, right? So spend more time alone. That again will take more of the energy back from the person, right? If you just do those two things, spend more time alone, keep your mouth shut, talk less. Spend more time alone, talk less, but don't complain. If you do those three things, you'll start to be more open and receptive and experience what it's like to be free from the craziness. Right? And then, the other things that you can do, and these are the most specific practices, right? And I've said here before, if you begin to pay more attention to the awareness than you do to the thinking, right, that will transfer the orientation from the person to the self, right? Pay more attention to the awareness than the thinking. But there is a caveat to that. If I say that to you, to pay more attention to the awareness than the thinking, and the person hears me say that, the person will be that which is paying more attention to the awareness instead of the thinking. And the way they'll do that is they'll think about it. You see the hook? The person will pay more, they'll say, oh, good, I got it, I'll practice that, right? Now I'm going to practice that. I am going to think to pay more attention to the awareness than the person, as the person. And that will actually have a reverse effect. All you're doing is empowering the person. All you're doing is reifying the person. It's the same thing with meditation. As long as the person's meditating, the meditation will continue to reify the person. The meditation will actually make the person a spiritual person, and that's worse. Spiritual person is worse than a regular person. Because they're above it, you see. They're a better person than people that aren't spiritual. So that's just sicker, that's all. So the caveat is it can't be a matter of the person paying attention to the awareness instead of thinking, right? First you have to reorient yourself, right? And you have to be clear. That's why you have to recognize awareness before you can do this practice. You have to recognize awareness, that which is there all the time, that never moves, that never changes. You have to focus on that and recognize it. You have to be clear that you recognize it. Then that awareness is aware of itself. The awareness is practicing being aware of itself. The awareness.
Recognizing awareness and thinking you're aware.
The difference between recognizing your awareness and thinking you're aware is thinking you're aware is thinking you're aware.
But you're saying, oh, I'm thinking, like I'm aware that I'm thinking. So to me, that's recognizing, but I'm not really thinking about it. I'm aware of it.
Well, all you have to do to break that up, right? Because in truth, you never had a thought. In truth, you're not thinking. In truth, you can't think.
Thoughts are there.
That's right.
Thoughts are there.
She's been hanging around for a while. So you see, the mind,
Thoughts arise.
thoughts arise. You're not thinking. You never were thinking. You never will be thinking. You can't think. It's impossible for you to think. Because the you that you think thinks just thinks that it's thinking. But it doesn't exist outside of that. Without that, there's no you to think. And in reality, you're not thinking because if you examine thoughts, right? And I've said this a million times, I'll say it a million more.
If you examine thought, if you pay attention to exactly what's going on, what Christine said is what's going on. Thoughts arise, and there's an awareness of the thoughts, yes? That's it. There's no you there. There's no you there. Thoughts arise, and there's an awareness of the thoughts. So you're not thinking. The awareness is there, and the thoughts arise. And in the end, there is no you that is producing the thoughts. The thoughts are just coming. You have no say-so over what the thoughts are, and you can't stop them. Right? That's a big pitfall that people have. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to practice meditation until I can control my thoughts. Good luck. Because at the moment that you think you controlled your thoughts, that was a thought. Right? So how do you know you're not thinking? Well, I had that thought. What? You see, it's a trap. It's a Chinese handcuff. You can't get out of it, right?
You even say to yourself when you have the thought, you even say to yourself, where the hell did that come from? Some thoughts just pop in your head about when you were a kid or something happened. You go, where the hell am I thinking about that?
Yeah. Yeah, but you see how slippery the slope is?
Yeah.
Why the hell did I think about that?
Yeah.
So that then is Nick thinking that he thought that thought.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Yeah. It just came,
Yeah.
It just popped in.
It just popped. But then Nick asked, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right? So that was Nick thinking he thought the thought. Where did that come from?
Exactly.
But there's still no Nick. There is no Nick.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
See, that's what you have to get clear about. There is no person. It's a phantom.
That's right.
It's possessing you. It's using your body to experience life as a brain, as a conditioned brain that's processing everything that's happening, right? That's programmed for pleasure and to avoid pain. And that's it. It's operating your body that way. Operating your body that way. And there's no life there. That's not life. It's mechanical. It's not life. See, to the extent that you get clear about this is to the extent that you're willing to do what it takes to escape from that prison. And if you're really clear about this, you're willing to do anything that it takes to escape from that prison. Because the alternative is that you go through life mechanically without ever actually being present, without ever actually being alive, and then the body drops. And that's all that happened. You were never there. Never there. That's why when people wake up and they actually make contact, right? Not by thinking, but they actually making contact with the awareness that they are, which is the awareness making contact with itself. When they have that experience, it's moving. They cry. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they laugh because they realize what a joke it is, right? Because it's always been there. It's always been that simple to experience it, and they were trying to experience it, and they realized that's a joke. It's ridiculous to try and experience it. And when you see people wake up to that, it's very often the case they laugh and then they say, really? It's that simple? Really? It's been like this all the time? They can't believe it, right? They can't believe it. And yet it's true. It is that simple, and it's been like that all the time. It's right there. It's right there. See, the thing is this. What the person doesn't realize, and this is the case for people who are religious, right? What the person doesn't realize is when religious people pray, their prayers are getting answered. They just don't like the answer, right? When religious people pray, they pray for something, right? And if they get what they prayed for, the prayer was answered, right? But if they don't get what they prayed for, the prayer wasn't answered. Oh, yes, it was. You just didn't like the answer. The answer was no. Right? The answer was no. Because God's saying, no, I'm not going to give you that. Right? The purpose of your suffering is so you can wake the hell up. And when you wake up, you realize you don't need what you thought you needed that you were praying for. You see? So it would be not acting in your best interest to just give you what you asked for. That's ridiculous. That's childish. That's one of the reasons why they say in a lot of spiritual teachings that, especially new in a contemporary approach to spiritual teachings, they say there's two parts. One is to wake up, right? And then once you're awake, grow up. Wake up and then grow up. What does that mean? It means once you're awake, now you know who you are, but you still have a childlike mind, right? You know who you are, but you still have a programmed brain that still wants to just get pleasure and avoid pain. Even though you're awake, that's still there, right? And so the next step is to start paying attention to that and stop feeding that animal, stop feeding that entity. That's what I mean when I say spend more time alone. You're not feeding it. That's what I mean when I say don't complain. You're not feeding it. And then if you recognize awareness, and out of the recognition, tune into that awareness and have that awareness watch itself. And if you do that, you're starving the person, because the person is now not in existence when you're doing that, right? Because it's not saying, I am aware. See, the awareness will try and capture the awareness and say, okay, I got the message. I am aware. No, you're worse off now. You're worse off than not knowing anything, right? Because now the person's claimed the awareness, right? And so it's no different than anything else the person's claimed, right? But it's not true, right? So the thing that has to happen is if the awareness is aware of itself, right? Then it's the person's not aware. It's not I am aware, it's awareness is aware. Or the way the teachers say it is presence. Awareness aware of itself is presence. Person aware of awareness is ignorance. Person aware of awareness is ignorance. Because if the person thinks it's aware of awareness, right, it's ignoring awareness, because the person can't be aware of awareness because the person is nothing other than a thought. So in order to practice that, and it's very powerful, the teachers who say if you practice this, right, that it will dramatically shorten how long it takes for you to wake up and stay awake, stay aware, be the truth of what you are. It's a shortcut. It's a direct way of doing it. The other way that they teach is the one that is related to the invitation, right? Because if you look at the invitation, what's the invitation doing? The invitation is saying, drop everything. Drop who you think you are, drop that you think you're your body, drop the past, drop everything. Drop everything that you have concluded is true and real. Drop everything you think you know and get to zero. And if you drop it all, right, the awareness is still there. You can't drop the awareness. You can drop everything but the awareness. You can't drop the awareness. And so if you let go of everything, and it's possible to do that, it's possible to just sit there and be empty, come to zero. If you drop everything, in other words, you don't know anything. You drop everything, you don't know anything. But the awareness is still there, right? And so that allows the awareness to reveal itself, because it's no longer being confused with everything else that you thought. So those are two very powerful methods. So I've given you 4 things. You can't do better than this, man. I'm giving you like exact stuff, right? People pay a lot of money. There are people who have given their fortunes away for these things. Honest to God, there are people who've given their fortunes away for these things, right? Because there are people out there that are looking to make money off of this. There's people who are looking to make money off everything, aren't they? So they'll sell you the truth. That's like selling water by the river, right? Selling you the truth is like selling water by the river. It's ridiculous. The truth is free. If you think you have to buy the truth, you're a sucker. You're the biggest sucker there is.
So your book, Dying to Live, it can't really help people. You're not going to learn how to do that, because you're engaging the mind when you read the book, right? So
That's right. So it's like if you can get this, it's very powerful. In order to get to the truth, you first have to have better lies. So you read spiritual books, right? They're better lies, because they're not true, right? And then after you read the better lies and you realize that that's not true, then there's nothing better to do, and you just let go and realize that you've always been there. That's the way it has to go. First, even the process that we're in here, because you begin the journey as a person, right? So you're a person wanting to be a spiritual person, right? And so then you go to spiritual teachers and you do spiritual practices and you read spiritual books as a person. So now you're a spiritual person. You're an improved model, right? But at some point you realize that you're still not experiencing the truth. You know about it, you feel better about yourself because you're a better person because you're spiritual, but you know you're not experiencing what the sage is experiencing, right? And then that gets you to let go of everything that you thought was the case, and then what is naturally there is the truth. It's as simple as that. What's naturally there is the truth. It's the water by the river. You don't have to go anywhere to get water. It's like the fish trying to get wet. It's like a fish trying to get wet. You know, they are wet, but they can't see it because it's always there, right? Same thing is true with the person, with you. You are awake. That's the thing about this that's really the joke. You are awake. Right now you're awake. You're enlightened. You are the awareness, but you're like a fish in water. You can't see it because it's so obvious that you keep looking through it to try and see it. You keep looking from it and through it to try and see it, which is never going to work, right? But you don't know any other tricks, so you'll do that anyway. No matter what anybody says, that's what you're going to do because that's the only thing you know how to do, right? So you'll do that. You'll keep looking from it and through it until one day after doing that, see, the first thing you do is do all the things the person does, and none of that works. And at some point that becomes obvious that that's a waste. That's never going to work. You give that up, right? Then you become a seeker. And as a seeker, you start looking for who you are. And when you're a seeker looking for who you're looking for is who's looking. But you can't help that. You can't help but do it anyway, right? So you're the found person looking for yourself. You're the found person looking for yourself. There is a guy out there now who created a new training thing, and what he did is, for years and years and years, people were called seekers, you know, and they would seek. They would go from one guru to the next. They would read books. They'd go to retreats. They'd practice meditation and yoga. Seekers. There's a lot of them out there. It's $1 billion market, right? And so what this guy did, he came up with a great idea. He said, okay, I'm going to start a new seminar series for people who are seekers, and he called it Finders. So you don't have to be a seeker anymore. You can become one of us. We're Finders. And then all he did was he explored different practices and teachings that were available, and took the ones that he thought were the best ones that people would get the biggest jacked up the most from doing, right? And he put them together, and he'd have the people spend 1 week at a time doing each of the practices and learning one of the teachings. And that's what the Finders course was. And you pay, I think, $1,000 for that. And then after you graduate from that, he says that research has shown, this guy is masterminded this business. He says that scientific research has shown that after his graduates complete the Finders course, that they're experiencing more consistent non-symbolic awareness. Non-symbolic awareness, like pure awareness, that they're experiencing. So he's getting a better result, right? So you don't want to be a seeker, you can be a finder and join this guy's thing. And he just put a book out called Finders, in which he documents all the research that proves that his path is more powerful and produces better results than other people. And of course, he's making a ton. But that's selling water by the river. The biggest realization you can have is that you don't need to realize anything. The biggest realization you can have is that all teachers are liars. There's no other way to teach it but to lie about it, right? Because you can't talk about it. There's no way to express it in language, right? So the only thing you can do is lie to people, but tell them better lies than the ones they already believe. And then they believe those lies, right? But they're still not experiencing the reality. But they're closer to experiencing reality because if you're a spiritual person and your life sucks, you're suffering more than somebody who's not spiritual. Right? Yeah, if you're a spiritual person and your life sucks, look at what happens in these institutionalized churches, right? Look what happens. The reason that so many priests become abusers, sexual abusers, right, is because they're in a position where they're supposed to know the truth. They're in a position where they're supposed to demonstrate the truth. They're in a position where they're supposed to be sharing the truth, helping other people wake up to the truth, right? And yet their experience is that they know that they don't know shit. They're not experiencing truth, they're miserable. A lot of them are alcoholics, right? And then what happens with the mind is when you're in that kind of a position where you're in so much strife and internal conflict, right? The desire to escape it becomes so strong that you'll do anything, right? And so what do you have? You have a lot of mentally ill people in religious, institutionalized religions. And I'm not just talking about Christianity, I'm talking about, look at Islam, right? Radical forms of Islam, people got so crazy, right? They got so crazy that their belief is that they'll die and go to paradise and have all these virgins for eternity, right? If you kill people, again, for the cause, if you kill people for the cause. And that's radical Islam, but don't forget there was a time in Christianity during the Crusades where the same thing was going on. The Christians were killing anybody that didn't believe in God. So it's not the religion itself, right? It's the sickness that happens when you're stuck in a belief system and you're not experiencing the truth behind it. That's a very uncomfortable place to be, right? So I've given you some things today that you can actually take and use. You know, stop complaining, spend more time alone, spend more time with a dog or a cat. Really?
Yeah.
Really, because they're sane. They're sane. That's why I love my cat. She's sane, right? Because she wants very little to do with the way we are. Cats are like that. You know, it's like they'll take you or leave you, but they're not interested in your crazy shit, right? So spend more time with animals. Go hang out at the zoo, right? Because animals are sane, right? Spend more time with animals. Spend more time alone. Stop complaining. And then recognize the awareness that you are and allow that awareness to consistently notice itself. And you'll wake up. Of course, you already are awake. You'll just wake up to the fact that you're awake. Awareness can notice that it's awake. The person can't notice that it's awake. Awareness can notice that it's awake. The person can't notice that it's awake because the person doesn't exist. That's the reason that this book that I'm working on finishing, I call it Dying to Live, right? It's a perfect title, right? Because it has a double meaning, right? On the one hand, you're dying to live. In other words, you're dying you're dying to be awake. You want it. You're dying for it, to die for it, right? You're dying for it. And then the other meaning it has is, in order to have it, you have to die. In order to have it, you have to die. You have to let go of who you consider yourself to be and all the investments you have in that and all the attachment that has to everything that it's attached to. You have to be willing to let all that go, and that'll bring about the death of the person. Right? And when that person dies, you will be alive. So there are people who've gone to spiritual teachers and said that have terminal illnesses, and they say, please help me. I want to die before I die. I want to die before I die. I want to die and still be here, right, as what I really am, so I can experience having been alive before the body drops. So one of the things teachers say to people is, wake up while the body's warm. Right? While the body's still warm, wake up.
This was the best session that you've ever given. But I noticed you walk around the mic. Is that because this is?
No, he's got it.
Good. This is really, really good.
Yes.
Really.
Great.
Well, one of the things that you have to look at as the person, first you have to admit that you're the person. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make you bad, right? It's just true. You just have to admit that you're the person, right? When you're sitting there meditating and you're struggling, you're trying to meditate, right? That's the person. And you can't move away from something that you're denying. Do you understand? You can't move off of being the person if you're denying that you are the person. First you have to own it. First you have to admit it, right? It's like an alcoholic, right? You have to admit you're an alcoholic before you can do anything about it, right? You have to admit that you're being a person until you can do anything about it, right? If you admit it, just the admission of it makes it possible to not be it. Because that which is admitting it has to not be it in order to recognize that it's it. Do you understand? That which is
recognizing it must not be it in order to see that it's being it. Do you understand?